Memory loss. As we age, some memory loss is inevitable. It can happen just from the aging process itself. It can happen from past medical conditions. I'm a breast cancer survivor and I went through chemotherapy, so I'm here to tell you that my memory is not as good as it used to be before that. So unfortunately, there's no cure for memory loss, but there are steps that can be taken to help keep a senior from losing as much of their memory as possible. I do want to say that if your senior loved one is having memory concerns or problems that are either affecting their safety or are affecting their daily life, it's time for you to step in, take them to the doctor, and get a cognitive assessment done. There are things that can be done. As I say, there's memory therapy that can help, and there's no need for the senior to lose as much as they may if there is no interceding. So keep watching for tips to help your senior loved one retain as much of their memory as possible. Hi, I'm Robin with SeniorSafetyAdvice.com. We release a new video every Friday with tips and tricks and advice to help seniors age in place safely. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and hit that subscription button down in the corner and also hit the notification bell, and that way you'll be alerted every time we put out a video and you won't miss any of our great advice. So everyone wonders, is memory loss a sign of Alzheimer's or dementia? I know for me, if I've got a word on the tip of my tongue and I can't think of what it is, the first thing that runs through my mind is, oh my gosh, am I getting dementia? That doesn't necessarily mean that you are. The National Institute of on Aging says that memory problems can be from health conditions, they can be from mild cognitive impairment, and they can come from emotional problems. In short, there's many reasons for people to have some memory loss. So if your loved one has memory loss, should you correct them? I mean, I've seen several patients. I can think of one in particular. The woman has memory problems and her husband will bring her in. And a lot of times she'll say something like, oh, my Aunt Judy took me to lunch at the Waldorf Astoria, and he'll come in. No, it wasn't Judy. It was Sophie. Don't you remember? Does it really matter? No, it doesn't. In her mind, it's Aunt Judy, whatever. Little things like that, let it go if it's somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia. Now, if it's a senior who has some mild cognitive impairment, then it may be a good idea to correct them. For example, if your aging mom says we're going to the dentist on Tuesday at 4, and you know they are going to the dentist on Wednesday at 2, then it would be fine to correct them. But for somebody, minor details, like I was talking about Aunt Judy and Aunt Sophie, it doesn't really matter. And all you're going to do is agitate the person. So just try to just not go into it with them. The other thing that you can think of is when they talk about something like that, let's say the person who has Alzheimer's or dementia says, oh, I'm so excited, my brother Bobby is going to come for dinner tonight. And Bobby passed away 20 years ago. There's no need to remind them of that either. First of all, they're not going to remember that in a few minutes. And second of all, you're going to upset them. It's not going to bring Bobby back. So what it means really is look for the deeper meaning. If she's saying her brother Bobby is coming for dinner, Bobby's probably on her mind. So try to gently steer the conversation into a different direction. Don't focus on the dinner part, focus on Bobby. Try and think of memories that maybe would make her happy to remember Bobby, or see if you can dig out pictures and you can sit down and talk about Bobby and things that they had done together. It's just always look for that deeper meaning and just try and think above or beyond what that knee-jerk reaction is. Again, it goes back to what difference does it make? That's the thing, when you have somebody who has a cognitive impairment, you have to kind of start thinking, What difference does it make? Pick your battles, and when you have something that it does make a difference, that's when you have to say something. But the rest of it, let it go. You save yourself an argument and you save them from being upset. So another tip that you can use to help a senior with memory problems is to keep to a schedule. Esther, the other half of the senior safety advice duo, she was an occupational therapist, and she talks about a patient that she had one time who did very well in a memory care unit. He had Alzheimer's, and he would do just fine. He kept to his breakfast routine. He always had gotten up and read the newspaper at breakfast, so they made sure there was a newspaper there and things like that. But then he would get up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, put on his hat and grab his jacket and try and get out of the memory care unit. So when they asked the family, what had he been doing before he was diagnosed at 4 o'clock every day? Well, he liked to go down to the corner bar and meet with friends. So that's what he was trying to do. So what they ended up doing is she had a recreational therapist who worked with her, and the recreational therapist set up a little bar. They served juice and they served peanuts and made it seem like, it was that neighborhood bar. They redirected him, and within a couple of weeks, he was going at 4 o'clock down to the bar in the memory care unit. So the point of this story is, try, if you have somebody who has a cognitive impairment, try to keep them to a routine and maybe think out of the box a little bit and find a way that you can keep them as much on a familiar schedule as possible. So tip number 3, Post-it notes, reminders, and notes. If you have a senior loved one who has some memory issues, some cognitive decline, even not Alzheimer's and dementia, I don't mean that, but just some memory issues, leave notes everywhere, put Post-it notes up. With my father, he had some issues sometimes with a telephone solicitor would call, and because my mother used to donate money to different little charities and things like that, in his mind, the solicitor was probably somebody from one of those charities that my mother used to donate to. So I ended up putting a note on the phone itself. Only let Robin do the donations. And it reminded him, because we talked about it many times, and then he would forget, and then he would pledge $20, and it would drive me crazy. So after I put that note on there, we never had to worry about it again. It's just a small example, but you might want to put a Post-it note on the stove. Remember to turn off the stove. A Post-it note in the bathroom. The dentist at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Another thing to put a note on for sure, or some type of a reminder, is if they're taking medication. And the medication needs to be taken on a certain day and at a certain time. There are pill boxes, we've all seen them, I have them, I'm sure everybody else does, that, they have the rows, and it'll say morning, afternoon, or lunchtime, whatever, evening, that kind of thing, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Those are good reminders, because then if the person does know the day and the time, then they know for sure that they have or haven't taken their medication. I used to set that up for my dad. Every week when I went to see him on Friday, I would set it up for the entire week, and then he had it. Something else that you can use is a device like an Alexa or a Google Home. Those can be set up with reminders as well for taking medications or for anything. I mean, I have them remind me, I have both, and I have them remind me about doctor's appointments and things like that. I put them in my phone as well, and I make sure that I put some type of an alarm on so that it lets me know as well. But you see my point. We have a great article. I'm going to put the link down in the comments below that talks about how to program an Alexa or a Google Home there's like 50 different things that they can be used for to help seniors remember things, play games, things like that. You can program the lights to come on at a certain time. There's a myriad of things, so be sure to check out that article. Something else that you would want to do is put memory sharp foods in the senior's diet. Make sure that, first of all, they're eating a varied diet, but you can put in things like kale and broccoli and avocados and berries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. All of the berries are really good for people. Believe it or not, coffee is very helpful for memory. Whole grains, oily fish like a salmon or that kind of a thing, or even fish oil tablets, but oily fish is better. Last but not least, a good memory food that I indulge in is dark chocolate. Now, not milk chocolate, dark chocolate. Something about those flavonoids. So, how can you prevent memory loss in the first place? Well, exercise. So many seniors, as they get older, they have arthritis, they have issues with their heart, maybe they get out of breath because they're not doing as much physical activity as they did when they were younger. But that physical activity, they need to either start it or ramp it up a little bit, of course with a doctor's approval, but when they are active like that, they're getting more oxygen flowing through their lungs, flowing through their body, which means more oxygen to the brain, which helps with memory. Another thing that can help with memory is to eliminate refined sugar products in general, refined foods. Those are not good for memory at all. And also, keeping socially active helps quite a lot with memory. I know, using my parents as an example, they had a large group of friends. Whenever they were talking with each other, would get together, they're talking, they're bouncing ideas off of each other. They were playing card games, so you had to remember rules and just things like that. Having that social interaction does a lot to help memory stay sharp. Then, of course, there are the games that they can play, the senior can play to help with memory. Jigsaw puzzles, Sudoku, crossword puzzles, word search puzzles, things like that all stimulate the memory. Another thing you personally can do, and the senior can do as well, is try to do something differently than you normally do it. So in other words, if you always take the same route when you go home from work, take a different route. This helps your brain because now you have to pay attention to the surroundings. You have to figure out, where are you turning? It's unfamiliar, so maybe, there's, a store on the corner that you never realized was there. All of these things stimulate your brain and help to create new neural pathways, which also helps to keep memory sharp. So what can you do differently? And then lastly, alcohol only in moderation. I know everybody, especially now with the COVID pandemic, it seems like I'm hearing a lot of people say that they're indulging in alcohol a little more. And I understand that, but really, women should be limited to, or should limit themselves to, one alcoholic drink a day. Men can have two, but that's it. You really should make sure it's only in moderation and no more than that. And probably less than that would be much better for your health, your memory, and your health. Okay, so if you have a senior loved one that you're concerned about memory issues, you may be wondering, when is the time to step in and take them to a doctor for a cognitive assessment? Well, one of the things is if the senior is constantly losing things. I mean, if they're misplacing their car keys 5 times a day, you probably should be taking that car away from them. They probably shouldn't be driving. They may not even remember how to get home at some point. I mean, I've had patients who have told me before that they did end up taking the car away from the parent once the parent was getting lost coming home from the grocery store in places that had been very familiar to them. You can always write a note that says keys are in the laundry room on the hook. But if, I'm using keys as an example, but if they have something that they are constantly losing, or you're finding the keys in the refrigerator a lot, things like that, it's time to take them in for an assessment. Another tip is if the parent is forgetting things as far as personal grooming habits. They don't take baths. They're forgetting to brush their teeth or comb their hair. They're putting their clothing on inside out. I mean, it happens. They just can't remember. Doesn't seem to them that there's anything wrong with it. If they're consistently doing things like that, they need to visit the doctor. Something else would be a change in their cognitive skills. For example, my mother was one of those people who balanced the checkbook to the penny every month. She could do it. She didn't use a calculator. She prided herself on not doing that. She did it all, by hand, wrote it down on an envelope, things like that. But she got to a point before she was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor. She got to a point where she just could not make sense of the checkbook. I would come over and balance the checkbook in 10 minutes. I wish I had known the tip then that having a change in cognitive ability like that was a sign to go and take her to the doctor, because I would have addressed it at that point, and maybe we would have found her tumor sooner and been able to get her treatment. She would have lived longer, but unfortunately, I wasn't aware of that at the time. So now I'm telling you, if you find something like that, it does not hurt to get a cognitive assessment. Another thing is if they have visual or spatial skills that change. So for example, they walk downstairs and they keep missing a step, or they're reaching for something on a table or in front of them, but they're overreaching or they're underreaching. That can actually be a problem with visual, so they should still be seeing a doctor for their eyes, but it can also be an indicator of a memory problem, so they should see a doctor. Some other reasons to take the senior loved one to the doctor and have a cognitive assessment is if you find that they're having a decrease in their judgment, or if they have poor judgment. Leaps to mind the senior who gets bilked out of their life savings because somebody on the phone, I don't know, gave them a sob story about being a Nigerian prince and they needed the money. I'm being funny on that, but you see what I'm saying is that if suddenly their judgment is not what it used to be, that is a sign of a problem. Another thing also that can be an indicator is, I shouldn't say this because it's my problem, but having trouble recalling words. Sometimes they're just on the tip of my tongue. And like I said, that's something that has changed since I have gone through chemotherapy. I don't think that in my case it's a need to go and have a cognitive assessment yet, because other things that I do function just fine, like making these videos, but I don't know. Anyway, but if you find that in your senior loved one that they have a lot of trouble remembering words, or they're mispronouncing words, words that are especially familiar words. I'm not talking about some word like supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I'm talking about words that really are something that they normally would use and they're having trouble pronouncing. And then lastly, if it's something like they invent words. Again, the patient that I was talking about that has the wife with the cognitive impairment, and Aunt Judy and Aunt Sophie, she has sometimes where she's telling me a story, but she can't think of the word that she wants to use. So she will use something to describe it. So she'll say, instead of saying, we watched a show on television, if she can't think of the word television, she'll say, on, the box that has the people in it, you know what I'm talking about. So that is definitely a sign of a cognitive impairment and should be addressed. So now the question is, will your loved one go for a cognitive assessment? Well, that can be a whole different ball of wax too. Especially if the senior is aware that they have some issues, they may be afraid to go in and find out that there's something wrong. But help them to understand that a cognitive assessment will help if there is an issue. Sometimes you can get it right at the very beginning before it becomes a problem. They can do memory therapy, which will help the senior stay where they are and maybe will help that not advance, or will help keep it from advancing quickly. So it really is a good thing to go in and get an assessment done. We all want to stay as mentally sharp as we possibly can for as long as we possibly can. So we've come to the end of my memory tips. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, if you have not subscribed yet, hit that subscription button down in the corner, and also hit the notification bell so that you can be alerted every time we release a video on Friday, so you can get more of these great tips on how to age in place safely. Until the next video, take care. See you soon. Bye.